I said that statement initially, and then after thinking about it for a year or two, I decided I was going to modify it and say, if you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand, I dropped the think, everything else that you understand, that you do understand, will confuse you. And how did I come to that conclusion? Based on logic. Because since white supremacy is a system that dominates everything that non-white people do 24 hours a day, in every area of activity, not just in some, it's not a partial thing. That's why it's supreme. That's why you call it white supremacy. If it was partial, you couldn't call it supreme because it means they left something out. So I came up with the 9 areas of activity that would cover what everybody is doing each and every minute of each and every day in one or more of these areas of activity. And I just came up with an orchestrated way of expressing it, and I call those 9 areas economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And I think that just about covers just about everything that every person is engaged in, minute by minute, day by day, anywhere on the planet at any given time. White people, non-white people, male, female, etc. They're engaged in one or more of these areas of activity, and all of these areas of activity are interrelated. Then I looked at the people who call themselves white supremacists and the system that they have set up. And they have set up a system that's designed to dominate and mistreat people of color. That's what racism is, or white supremacy is. People set up to mistreat and dominate people of color, people who have been classified as non-white, in all of these areas of activity, all of the time. So therefore, if the victims of this system, which is an incorrect and an unjust system, an unjust government, that's what it is. If the victims of this system are dominated in all of these areas of activity, then if they don't understand the one government that dominates everything that they do in all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, then they are not going to understand anything, because that's the thing that they are responding to all day long, everywhere that they are. You have to respond or react to the thing that dominates what you do.
So family, I played that clip at the beginning of Neely Fuller to illustrate an example of a confused, lost, misguided Negro who's confused, just bewildered, doesn't know what's going on, right? And this is a perfect example of Waka Flocka. You know, of course, as we know, the Drake album, the drop Scorpion, which I've heard the album. I'm gonna be honest, I ain't even heard the whole entire album. I heard like maybe 5 or 6 tracks. I just wanted to listen to the tracks that were related to Pusha T and what he addressed in terms of that. And obviously he conceded and lost the battle to Pusha T. You know, changed the whole narrative of his album just to explain and concede the points that Pusha T made and validated, right? But that's neither here nor there. So the Drake album dropped last Friday on the 29th, and of course it's doing mega numbers, breaking all streaming records and all this stuff because he's a pop rapper. But he's not my cup of tea. And on Drake's song, he has a feature with Jay-Z called "Talk Up," which that's a song I actually like and listen to. And Jay-Z had a verse addressing George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, and this is the lyric thanks to the post by DJ Academics. He says, I got your president tweeting I wouldn't meet with him. Y'all killed X. Let Zimmerman live. Shh. The streets is done. So, I mean, you have to agree with that lyric wholeheartedly. You know, you have to. Unfortunately, you have a lot of lost Negro misguided coons out there, such as a Waka Flocka, that when they heard that particular bar, it went over their head because, again, they're confused. They don't know how racism, white supremacy works. So when you don't know how things work, you are confused, and your reaction is what has been programmed and socially engineered for you to decipher, which is what his statement is here. I respect everything about Jay-Z, but on the Drake record, those words was uncalled for, Jay. You got way more coins, connections than us, my G. You could have got the job done, but blame the misguided or unguided youth. I know, I see, I hear truth. Hashtag just know, hip hop always live and well. First of all, what does hip hop always alive and well have anything to do with it? He never said anything about hip hop being dead or whatever the case may be. Again, like I said, when you have this thought process of saying that money and reputation can potentially eradicate racism, white supremacy, because that's exactly what George Zimmerman practiced. He practiced racism, white supremacy. You can the angle of a person that disagrees with that, of course, they're going to say, well, George Zimmerman, you know, he's not white, he's Hispanic. You know, first of all, Hispanic is not a race. Secondly, he identifies himself as white. Those are facts. He identifies himself as white, so he can label that on his driver's license, on a Census Bureau documentation as white. So he is practicing white supremacy. That's what he demonstrated when he murdered Trayvon Martin. Okay, and that's what he continues to do. He continues to demonstrate racism, white supremacy with all the interactions he has with black people. His comments, you know, saying the N-word and using derogatory terms towards black people. Just find it, Google it, you'll see it. He practices racism, white supremacy, and he is a white supremacist. Bottom line. All right. So, again, he says that Jay-Z has a lot of money. He should be able to, you know, get George Zimmerman himself, rather. He should be able to get George Zimmerman because he has a lot of money. Well, if that were true, then guys like Donald Trump, aka Clockwork Orange, wouldn't be in office. If that were true, right? The 500 years of slavery, of the 500 years of free labor from the transatlantic slave trade wouldn't have happened. Because again, we have documented the richest or the most wealthiest person on the planet, whose name is Mansa Musa, who predates the transatlantic slave trade. And Africa is the richest nation in terms of natural resources on the planet. Yet our ancestors still got mistreated, subjugated, disenfranchised, executed from non-black people, the dominant white society. Right? If that were true. If that were true, people like Oprah Winfrey, which I won't play the clip, but just to illustrate a point, Oprah Winfrey went to, of course, this is a famous story. She went to a Louis Vuitton store overseas, tried to buy an expensive purse, and was told, you can only buy that purse where you came from, aka Africa, nigger. You don't have the money to buy that purse. Because white people don't see and don't care how much money Oprah Winfrey, who is a billionaire, has. They see her as one thing, and that's a black nigger. That's it. So your money and your so-called reputation means absolutely nothing in the system of racism, white supremacy. And unfortunately, Negroes like Waka Flocka don't understand that. And unfortunately, lost Negroes, right? And this was perfectly, and I've said this before also, but I was listening to the audiobook. Shout out to Jay Prince of his audiobook, the Art and Science of Respect. It was, hey man, that's a great audiobook. And he mentioned something about, living in poverty and how crime in impoverished communities happen. He says, because you're in close quarters or in close proximity to other black people, right? You live in an impoverished neighborhood around non-white people. And when you live in close proximity to non-white people, you get to see patterns, you get to see different things on a day-to-day basis that they may or may not have. So, for instance, you have a neighbor that lives across the street, you wonder how that car that was sitting on their driveway for so long, how it got fixed. You're able to see that pattern. And then you wonder where they get the money to get that car fixed. And you wonder, okay, well, so-called Christmas is coming up. What they got under the Christmas tree? Where they get the money for that? And then the person who lacks what the other person doesn't have, or does have rather, they're going to want what they have because they live in close proximity. And that's the situation that happened with XXX Tentacion. You have a guy who went motorcycle shopping or dirt bike shopping, and you saw a bunch of Negroes, misguided Negroes, who saw a guy who had more than what they had, and because they were in close proximity in the same location, they wanted what he had, and they wanted it by any means necessary, right? You see the power of killing your own kind, killing your brother, your black brothers and sisters, versus eradicating racism, white supremacy by a troglodyte bastard like George Zimmerman, who's still walking the earth breathing with no problems. The power of killing your own brother supersedes white supremacy. And that's how white supremacy continues to dominate and confuse black people, because they make us, white supremacy confuses us to the point where we are enemies of each other because of the conditions, the systemic conditions that they created for this to happen, coming from impoverished environments where black people live in those environments, and of course, quote unquote, black on black crime happens. Why does it happen? Because of that condition that was created by the dominant white society, right? And again, if you go back to the document, the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, Google that document, the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders. You can Google that document and Google GMOGMediaTV after Google the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, GMOGMediaTV. And I break it down on several videos. But the point of that document, right, that was produced in 1967 to find out why there was so much civil unrest in communities populated by black people. The main problem or findings that they mentioned in that particular study was racism, white supremacy. They basically said we live in two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. That's what they found in 1967, and nothing has changed since then, in 2018 and beyond. All right. So just like Neely Fuller said, and you know, that's my go-to guy in terms of understanding how racism, white supremacy works. We are dominated and subjugated and mistreated and disenfranchised and etc. in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. We're dominated by that. We're dominated by that. Even a culture that we created on our own, hip hop, is dominated by racism, white supremacy. And the fact that he mentioned that it's alive and well, it's alive and well. It's alive and well and ran. It's alive and well. That's correct. But it's ran by the dominant white society. We don't own or control hip hop. No, it's owned and controlled by the dominant white society. You can say Jews all you want. Jews are classified as white. They're classified as white. So again, it's dominated by the dominant white society. Racism, white supremacy. Right? And that line that Jay-Z said again about X being killed and George Zimmerman, that was a perfect setup or a segue for his upcoming documentary that's going to be debuting July 30th. Rest in Power. I did watch the trailer. I'm definitely going to watch it. I'll have the link in the description so you can check out the trailer. And I believe some parts were shot or recorded in Miami Gardens, so I'll definitely be watching that and supporting that project for sure. But Jay-Z executive producing a documentary like that to bring awareness of what really happened and this, just the story of Trayvon Martin and his family. That alone, doing that is more than Waka Flocka has ever done about Trayvon Martin, right? Or any injustice involving black people. Point blank and simple. So I will be watching that documentary for sure. It premieres July 30th, and yeah, man, I'm looking forward to that documentary. But anyway, fam, those are my thoughts about Waka Flocka saying that you need to have money and reputation to get George Zimmerman killed, which made absolutely no sense. And this shows you he is a lost, confused Negro. Point blank and simple. All right, family. So those are my thoughts on that. Leave your comments down below in the comment section. Smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And also check out my sports channel, GMOG Sports TV. All right, family. Until next time, Chauncey, a.k.a. the Black Separatist, signing out. Peace.